Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Flood Circle, a 20 Palaces novel, by Harry Connolly, narrated by Daniel Thomas May. Chapter 1. Tristan Serac couldn't have known that Annalise was coming to kill him that day, but he was prepared for her and for me, anyway. Either he knew we'd come to town and were headed to his place, or he lived every day as if he knew. How he managed to slip away from us, I still don't know. Serac ran a private security company, and he'd seen our faces. He knew us well. Still, we'd been very careful. Maybe not careful enough. We'd driven south out of Washington state well before sunrise, then passed through Oregon into California. Last week, Annalise had swapped her Dodge Sprinter, which had been past its prime when she put it in storage more than 7 years ago, for a new, to her, 2014 Ram ProMaster. And I was behind the wheel, as always. This wasn't Annalise's first broken-down van, but it was the newest. So new, in fact, that it had come out a little more than 5 years back, while I was still trapped in the belly of a supernatural predator. I'd missed a lot of new things in those years, but I would have been perfectly happy to never have the pleasure of driving this boring white Dodge fucking ProMaster, with the dings around the back bumper and a paint job on the front end that looked newer than the rest. I'd had it tuned up the day before we hit the road because I didn't like the way it rumbled, but it didn't sound much better on the open highway. Maybe the garage had ripped us off. Maybe the problem was with the engine mounts or something else a tune-up wouldn't check. Still, I hated it. This is embarrassing. Annalise sat slumped in the passenger seat, her tiny feet up on the dash. She'd been sitting in silence for the last 300 miles, and as I watched, she surfaced out of her trance and turned her beady eyes to me. "It's embarrassing, boss," I said again. "When I'm driving something that sounds like it's shaking itself apart at highway speeds, people think I don't take care of it. When I'm driving something with dings on the back bumper, they think I don't know how to park. When they see this mismatched paint, they think I can't tell when a sales rep is selling me a lemon, a car that's been in a wreck. I'm the one behind the wheel. This shit reflects on me." With her little girl voice, Annalise said,
"Shut the fuck up, Ray. What do you care what some asshole in the next lane thinks?"
Fucking typical. Annalise didn't even care what the asshole in the next seat, meaning me, thought of her. If she had, the van wouldn't be filled with her armpit stink in fucking December when it was too cold to crack a window. And it was also typical that she didn't understand how important the face you showed to the world could be. How you looked was how people treated you. And we looked like victims. But we were not victims. I'd seen my boss tear off a car door and hit someone with it. I'd seen her shrug off a bullet to the face. She was a sorcerer and a peer in the 20 Palace Society, which meant she'd moved beyond worries about carjackers, cops, or other random assholes with guns. Still, a ride like this makes us look like doormats. That matters, boss. How people see us matters. She turned away. Whatever she had to say to that, she kept it to herself. We didn't talk again until we drove by Serac's house the first time.
"This fucker right here,"
was all she said. I didn't know what I expected from a $3 million house in San Jose, but this was less than that. Near the end of a cul-de-sac, but cramped by houses on either side, the house didn't leave a lot of yard in the front. The walls were white, the roof slightly peaked and covered with orange tile, and high rectangular windows made the small panes of glass. The front of the house was dominated by a huge, ugly, white garage door with slender, tinted windows at the top. The other houses on the block weren't identical to this one, but they were all of the same style: orange slanted roofs, high, narrow windows, big garage doors, and they all looked slightly bloated like overinflated balloons. And they stood almost close enough to touch. "Boss, does that look like a $3 million house to you?"
"It's a $2 million plot of land. If he'd spent $3 million on a house somewhere else, he might have a security fence or something."
I turned around in the loop at the end of the cul-de-sac. then glanced at the house again. I spotted 2 cameras, one covering the driveway approach and the other at the edge of the porch, but didn't have time to look for more.
"Keep going,"
Annalise said. She'd taken out her phone.
"We're going to eat first, and wait for night to fall."
I took out my phone and glanced at it. It was barely past 4:30 in the afternoon, and I had to drive through terrible traffic to find a gigantic parking lot with standing restaurants sprinkled across it. Annalise wanted Applebee's for some reason, and we sat in a back corner ordering wings and chicken tenders through the long hours until nearly 9 at night. I scrolled through my phone because my boss had no interest in talking to me, and I'd left my paperback in the van. I watched and re-watched videos of that day's police brutality, a privately owned unmanned rocket ship breaking apart 60 seconds after liftoff, and an avalanche of clips that were stupid, funny, or both. It was full dark when we returned to Sarax Street, but the streetlights and floodlights robbed us of any chance to move unseen. I parked in the cul-de-sac. "Boss, there's a footpath where a cross street should be. You go up there and hit the house from behind while I go in through the front."
"No,"
she said.
"We're switching places this time."
"What?" "Boss, I'm the wooden man. I'm supposed to be the distraction." Annalise pulled on her vest. During our weeks in Seattle, when we were searching for Sarax's name, she'd taken the time to replenish her spells. Now her vest bristled with colored ribbons held in place with alligator clips. At the end of each ribbon, she'd inscribed a spell.
"Ray, you stopped being a wooden man when we killed Roman Marchuk. You're not a peer, either, obviously, or an investigator. We don't have a name for the role you're playing. Not yet. We don't even know what your role is supposed to be. From what I've heard, Callan has been demanding that Isser recruit his own Ray Lilly, so maybe that's what this new role will be called."
I hated that, although I didn't know why. "You're the boss. If you say switch places, we switch." We stepped out of the van. Annalise slung her firefighter's jacket over her vest and zipped up the front. It hung down to her knees. That, along with her nearly shaved red hair and clunky boots, made her look like a homeless kid. She broke right along the sidewalk, heading toward the front walk of Sarax's house. I went left, cutting across the grass to the footpath. Which was nice, actually. At first, I thought it was odd that a neighborhood would turn a sensible grid into a series of dead-end streets, but the footpath that connected all these little cul-de-sacs felt unexpectedly luxurious, like I was visiting a country estate. Even now, a little after 9, there were others out on the paths. An Asian couple in expensive running gear, complete with headlamps, jogged uphill without looking at me. Coming downhill was a middle-aged white woman holding a tiny corgi on a leash. Her other hand was covered by a plastic dog-shit bag. Then I was even with the back of the houses. Sarax was second from the end, and there was a narrow path between the cedar fence around his neighbor's backyard and the concrete wall that supported the houses uphill from them on the next block. I started down it.
"Hello?"
A woman's voice called from behind me.
"Looking for something?"
I turned. It was the lady with the corgi, and she already had her phone out, snapping a picture of me the moment my face was visible. Annoying. Her expression suggested that she was being pleasant and polite, but only by force of will. Her corgi slowly trotted around her, wrapping the leash around her legs. "Yes," I said, trying to be heard without shouting. "My friend's pet. Poor thing escaped from its cage, and it might get hurt out here."
"Ooh," she said without altering her false politeness. "What sort of pet? Is it a hamster or—"
"Boa constrictor," as I turned away again. There was a cry of alarm from behind me. "Only an 8-footer, I said over my shoulder. Not that I knew the first thing about big snakes. "Not a threat to people, but if someone else finds it first, they may shoot it out of fear. Let me know if you see it." And I was off down the path, hoping the delay hadn't left Annalise hanging. I didn't want that woman calling the cops before I'd even reached the back door of Sarax's place. I didn't care if she showed the photo around. I was on the twisted path, after all, but these missions for the Society were supposed to be secret. No cops allowed. I picked up the pace. The cedar fence came to an end, switching to a trellis laced with some kind of thorny plant. I thought it might be roses, but today was New Year's Eve, so there were no flowers to check. Not that I knew anything about gardening. A thorn pierced the ring finger of my right hand as I boosted myself over, and at the same moment I felt the pain, a shotgun blast sounded at the front of the house. The trellis warped and cracked as I climbed, but it didn't break. As I came over the top, a security light shone directly into my eyes. Landing on my back and rolling across the grass, I quickly scanned the space around me. Plush outdoor chairs with all-weather covers were placed around a fire pit on one side of the yard, and a brick pizza oven and grill sat on the other. I saw no one. Then I looked at the sliding glass door. The rooms inside were lit only by the glow of expensive gadgets. Sarak's face, visible only by the indirect shine of the security light, appeared suddenly, moving toward the glass. He looked at me without expression. For a moment, he looked like a mask hanging in a darkened shop window. He bolted to my right as I scrambled to my feet. A moment later, my ghost knife was in my hand. It was the only spell I had left that I had cast myself, and I'd drawn it on a small sheet of notepaper no bigger than my palm. Since then, I'd stiffened the paper with laminate and a couple of layers of clear mailing tape that had begun to turn yellow at the edges. Not that a little wear and tear would have any effect on the spell itself. The ghost knife cut through ghosts, magic, and dead things, which meant it sliced inanimate objects like a sharp knife through warm butter. It destroyed magic spells by splitting the sigils apart, and it passed through living things without leaving a visible mark, although it changed them in other ways. I slid the ghost knife through the metal jamb where the sliding glass door handle met the frame. The door slid open easily, and a small piece of metal, part of the latch, I assumed, cut free by my spell, clattered against the tile floor. After having the security light burning into my eyes, the room was darker than I expected. As I followed Sarak, I stumbled over something I couldn't see, which meant I was off balance and entirely unprepared to be slammed against the wall by a linebacker-sized someone. Not that I could see him. I just felt his size and strength drive the breath out of me. Fireworks swirled in my field of vision. He stepped back. I tried to stay on my feet, and failed. Fuck. A shotgun racked, and this guy, whoever he was, I hadn't even looked at him yet, began to shout at me to stay down and show my hands. My head was still swimming, despite the protective spells that had been put on me, and when I tried to get onto my hands and knees, he kicked me, knocking me onto my back. I got a good look at him as he shouted that he had the legal right to shoot me. He was well over 6 feet and jacked like a bodybuilder, although he had the milky paleness of a guy who got all his fitness indoors. His black hair was shaved high and tight, and his black shirt was at least a size too small. This asshole wanted everyone to see how much time he spent at the gym. "Stay down!" he kept shouting. Then he noticed the ghost knife in my hand and aimed the shotgun at it. Before he could yell at me to drop it, I flicked it toward him. It passed through his ankle. It split his bootlaces and created a perfect, nearly vertical slot in the cuff of his pant, but it passed through his skin without leaving a trace. I expected the linebacker to suddenly relax and then apologize for knocking me on my ass. That's the effect the ghost knife usually had. Instead, he pointed his weapon at my heart and shot me in the chest. Chapter 2. It didn't even hurt. The ghost knife was my own spell. It was a part of me, and I could feel it when it was nearby and make it go where I wanted just by thinking about it. But it wasn't the only spell I had. The outsides of my arms, from my knuckles to my elbow, were covered with magic that made that part of my skin bulletproof. And so was my chest from my collarbones down to my hips. So the shotgun blast felt like someone threw a sofa pillow at me. And it stank. I could have gone my whole life without smelling that acrid, scorched, metallic plume that billowed over my face. But that wasn't the life I had. I called my ghost knife back and felt it zip into my hand again. It was supposed to cut the aggression out of this asshole, but it had failed. He was protected against it. Somehow he was protected against the effect of my spell. A flare of green firelight lit the far end of the house, shining through the doorway. The linebacker turned toward it, just like anyone would, and I threw my ghost knife upward. I was aiming for the trigger of his shotgun, but the asshole was moving so much that I wasn't sure where the spell had hit or even if it had hit at all. Pieces of the shotgun didn't fall onto me anyway. In the same motion, I rolled onto my side and threw a hard left into the side of the linebacker's knee. I really, really wanted to hear the satisfying crack that would send this asshole to the emergency room. But he was too strong. Still, he lost his balance and fell, splintering a little coffee table. He racked the shotgun and sat up as I was getting to my knees. I lunged at him. This was point-blank range, and nothing in his expression betrayed shock or surprise that I had survived the first round of buckshot as he aimed at my face. I grabbed the end of the barrel and pulled it down. It went off again just as I centered it on my breastbone. The linebacker sagged backward, falling flat on his back. Then he stopped moving. I scrambled toward him, ready to slug him with everything I had, but there was a hole in his face just below his right eye. My ghost knife must have hit the weapon after all, damaging the barrel, and it had blown up in his face. Part of me thought I ought to feel sorry for him. I'd certainly felt bad for other security guards who'd ended up on the wrong side of the society, but not this guy. He'd been immune to my ghost knife, and he had seen me shake off a blast from a shotgun without blinking an eye. He'd known who I was and what to expect, and that meant he was like me. He was an asshole. Serac. I listened for the sound of his fleeing footsteps, or the closing of a panic room door. What I heard instead was a man's scream that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I'd heard thousands of screams in movies and on TV, but none of them ever sounded like the real thing. That meant Annalise was doing her work. She didn't need my help. In fact, this time she was my distraction. I went in the direction that Serac had gone, turning into an office at the side of the house. A large ground-floor window hung open, and so did an interior door. After making sure no one was hiding under the desk, I looked out the window. The house next door was barely 10 feet away. I might have suspected that Serac had climbed out here and climbed in there, except I could see silhouettes against the curtains as the residents ran around in a panic, gathering up kids, yelling into telephones. They'd heard the gunfire and were in an absolute panic, which meant Serac hadn't gone that way. If his neighbors were his escape plan, then a plan would have to exist, and those people were not acting according to a plan. I ran through the door into the rest of the house, then into the garage. A little silver Mercedes, a GLC 250, an SUV that I had never even seen before, sat alone in the dark. Serac wasn't inside it. The side door was locked and bolted. He couldn't have gotten out this way. He didn't have time. But I was giving him time because I was searching in the wrong places. I rushed back into the house and found only Annalise coming at me from the kitchen. There was a side entrance with a pair of deadbolts. I threw one to unlock it and knew Serac hadn't gone this way. Would he have taken the time to insert his house key and lock it again? I doubted it. And the only way he could have thrown that bolt without me hearing it was if it had been perfectly timed to the linebacker's gunshots.
What the fuck, Ray?
I spun around, looking for another door, or maybe the entrance to a panic room. Thin air, boss. She scowled at me as though I was making excuses, which... Fuck that, I wasn't. I saw him. He ran. One of his guys shook off my ghost knife and shot me. By the time I handled him, Serac was gone. Annalise turned away, looking less pissed off with each second.
Those fuckers had iron gates on them.
Which would explain how they resisted my ghost knife. I looked over Annalise's shoulder toward the kitchen. Serac had a gas stove, which meant his house would be easy to burn. Fire? Annalise shook her head.
We're not here because he went after my friends, and we're not looking to destroy paper spellbooks. Serac is supposed to have 2 of the 3 original artifacts that magic comes from, and no fire in this world can destroy them. All it would do is make them easier to find in the ashes, and we don't have time for that, assuming they're even here, which I doubt. Shit! I wanted Serac himself. I wanted him to answer my questions.
Distant sirens grew louder. We had a little time, but now that I'd heard that sound, I wanted to use every second for getting away. Then what's next? I asked, forcing myself to stand still and wait for her to give the order. She looked at me as if she could read my mind.
We go!
I ran into the woman with the corgi as I led Annalise back to the car.
Was that you?
She asked. They killed it, I said as I hurried past. They didn't have to, but they did.
Maybe it scared them. Maybe they didn't know.
But she was talking to my back. In the van, Annalise asked who killed what, and as I started the engine and pulled away, I explained the lie I told. She didn't respond for a moment, and I had no idea what she was thinking until she said,
Iron gates, Ray. Fucking iron gates. The guy is either a rogue or he's working for one, and he's not being secretive about it.
I knew what she meant right away. The best security for anyone with any kind of treasure is for no one to know you have it. Security systems can be disabled, guards shot, and vaults cracked, but if no one knows you're rich, no one will come around to rob you. And magic was the most dangerous treasure there was. People who wanted magic were the biggest assholes in the world. So, if Serac was flaunting his spells, he was either a moron, which was dangerous enough, or he had the kind of power that scares off the assholes. We didn't get a chance to search his place, I said.
And we needed it, Ray. This time we really needed it. We're not going to get another shot at his home, not right away at least, and we're going to have a hell of a time hunting him down now. This asshole hires ex-military, and his security company probably has safe houses and shit. What should have been quick and clean just got very dirty. The police are about to become interested in us, and Serac himself.
She shook her head.
Even with the twisted path spells we're carrying, we're going to have trouble coming our way.
So we put the van into storage again and rent something smaller. Maybe get a lawyer or retainer or something.
We need investigators,
Annalise said. She sounded aggravated, as though she was embarrassed that she had to say it. I could understand, sort of. Investigators were one of the tools the 20 Palace Society used to hunt down spellcasters. They investigated weird shit, then filed reports. If a report indicated that something supernatural was going on, a peer would show up to start killing and burning. Investigators were supposed to be gone by the time my boss was on the scene. Annalise was already on her phone arranging things. She wanted someone who already knew everything about the society and their mission. Our mission. I'd been doing this shit long enough. It was my mission too. How was it that I still felt like an outsider? She arranged for an investigator and a law firm to update her dossier on Serac Tristan, owner of 10 Bar Security Services. When she hung up, she pointed me toward a storage facility. The van was going into storage, and we'd be swapping plates again, just in case. It was a pain in the ass, but we couldn't be lazy about this shit. Annalise and I may have been doing necessary work, but we were criminals. We broke into people's houses and burned them down. Sometimes we left assholes dead on the floor. Good or bad, and I thought we were good, or I wouldn't be spending my nights in nameless motels or my days in a van permanently infused with Annalise's gym lockers stink. We were still criminals. Getting sloppy was just one of the ways people like us could get busted or killed. At least this was something we could control. Once all that prep was done and I had a change of clothes, toothbrush, and my paperback stuffed into a little gym bag, along with the old plates, which would have to be ditched as soon as possible, we walked out into the street. Annalise had a bag on her shoulder too, but I couldn't guess at what was in it. Her own spellbook, which I'd never seen in all the years we'd traveled together. Her vest with the little colored ribbons on it. She had a way of carrying her stuff so that I only saw it when she had it in her hands, like a character in a video game. I leaned against the back of the van and rested my head against the panel. I'd hoped the metal would feel cool, but it didn't. This was the biggest mission I'd ever undertaken for the Society. This could turn our momentum around 180 degrees. Every spell in the world came from these 3 original spell books, which were not actually books at all. We'd already recovered one years before. It was called the Book of Oceans, and it was nothing more than a tiny pool of liquid, not even enough to fill a pint glass. But if you stared into it... Right now it was hidden away. If we could get our hands on the other two, then no one would be able to create a new spellbook without the permission of the 20 Palace Society. That wouldn't eliminate the dangers of assholes casting spells that, if they went wrong, could wipe all life from the face of the planet. But it would reduce them. It would be a real win, a win we desperately needed.
If Serac has the Book of Motes and the Book of Grooves in his house,
Annalise said,
our visit might force him to move them. Then we could try again, hitting him in transit and walking away with our prizes.
We'd have to watch his house, boss, and I have no idea how we'd do that in his neighborhood. The houses are close together and have a shit ton of cameras, not all of them pointing inward. I was walking on that path for all of 30 seconds before someone asked me who I was and took my picture. If there's a way to put a watch on that dude's place without getting hassled, I don't know what it is.
Pfft.
Annalise pointed down the street toward a squarish building with no windows and a little sign that was turned at an angle I couldn't read.
That's where we're going. You're going to think up a plan before we get there.
By the time we arrived, I had 2 plans. Maybe Annalise understood me better than I thought. The sign suggested this was a dive bar, but this was Silicon Valley. Even the dive bars served aioli with their fries, which meant this wasn't a dive bar at all, and we were the worst-dressed people in the place. After having camped out in a fucking Applebee's all afternoon, I still wasn't hungry, but I was happy to let my boss buy me a pint. We huddled in a corner booth and listened to guys in polo shirts and big stupid beards argue about crypto. I said, "First idea is the one that probably won't work. We rent a house across the street. I know, it's not clever, but we could set up quietly and sleep in shifts." Annalise looked at me with no expression at all.
I'm not going to sit in a fucking chair all day waiting for some asshole to make his move, but we can put people in place to take care of it. But I didn't see any for rent signs out there.
We can check with a realtor, maybe, although in that neighborhood it's more likely that we'd find an Airbnb. But you're right, it's a long shot. I put it first because I'd love to sleep in a house for a few days. Backup plan is that we park a car on the street, something new and nice that won't stick out, and plant a camera in the window. We'd have to be camped somewhere nearby, or someone would, and watch in shifts, but...
Fine,
she said with a wave of her hand.
Plan A if we can, Plan B if we have to. I hate to leave that asshole's house unwatched tonight, but if you can't come up with a way to do it without the cops spotting us, I'm not going to sweat it.
I turned the problem over in my head, but nothing short of a home invasion on one of Serac's neighbors came to mind, and that idea sucked. Besides, I had another mental itch that needed to be scratched. Boss, do those guards make sense? Annalise had her pint halfway to her mouth, but she stared at me and set it down.
What do you mean?
The guy has money, obviously. He runs his own company and he can afford a big house on an expensive block, right? But either he knew we were coming and hired 3 bodyguards to drive us away, or he didn't know we were coming, which means he has 3 guys for a McMansion squeezed into a block of McMansions.
Serac runs his own private security company.
Sure, boss. He'd hit you with a big surcharge if you wanted to hire 3 of his guys.
Not that they'll let me. The society has been trying to get me an appointment at 10 Bar for a week. They keep putting us off.
Brushing us off, you mean. But that's not my point. There's no surcharge for him. He could just pay those guys' salaries. He's got the people and he's got the money. But doesn't it feel wrong to you? Iron gates, armed guards, spellbooks. I said the last word at a whisper. Stuffed into that little house on a street with neurologists and CFOs, whatever that is. Serac is dangerous, sure, but he doesn't feel big enough for this. This time Annalise took a drink from her glass.
You think he's working for someone else?
Dude is literally security for hire. I don't think security for hire gathers the original spellbooks to himself while living in an overpriced sardine can surrounded by nosy neighbors. It feels too exposed.
You keep talking about how it feels, Ray.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?